welcome Leonardo DiCaprio. Hugh Glass is the Revenant. Thank you. He is the director of such a wonderful film. Please welcome Alejandro González Iñárritu. Welcome. He's one of the actors. Please welcome Will Poulter, who plays Jim Bridger. I'm so sorry to keep you waiting, but here they are. Thank you for being in Paris with us today.
Thank you.
And my first question will be for you, Alejandro. I mean, you spent 5 years and even more living with, so to speak, with the Revenant. What made you so passionate about Hugh Glass's story and the themes it explores?
Well, you know, I think I have been living now for almost 15 years in the United States. So there was a lot of elements of, first, obviously, the incredible physical adventure of this man that happened 200 years ago was fascinating in terms of the resilience and the endurance that he has to survive. And my question was, what made this man survive these things? But the other element that really, in a way, fascinated me, or the possibilities to explore cinematically in these landscapes, a thing that I have never done, that I was feeling terrified. And when I felt that I was afraid to do in this film, I knew that it was a great sign that I should do it. And the context of the film happens in the beginning of the story of the United States, and many of the things that were happening there, the misunderstanding and the fear of the others and the judge of people by the color of skin. Being myself somebody in the United States with a dark skin thing, and in the context of today's world, and in the context of today's situation with the relation of human beings with nature, I thought that that context really contained a lot of things that were really resonating with the world that we are living today. You know, so those were the reasons.
Question on the floor, yes, please.
Une question pour Monsieur Iñárritu. Votre déjà importante carrière vous a permis de vivre énormément de vies différentes. Je voulais savoir ce que ce rôle en particulier vous avez appris sur vous, que vous ne connaissiez pas encore.
Well, obviously, with your career, you've lived many lives as an actor. What did this role basically teach you about yourself, maybe? What allowed to explore?
You know, I think much like any role that I take on, you obviously do as much preparation as you possibly can about the time period. You do try to get yourself into the headspace of the character, but this was a completely unique experience for all of us. I think the act of recreating this man's story, of immersing ourselves in the natural world to try to recreate his struggle, the sheer act of doing that within these locations gave us a lot of the answers of what this character ultimately became and what the movie was about. The action pushed the narrative, so to speak, and it was a largely silent, internalized performance, and that, you know, that was an interesting one because it allowed me to just rely more on instinct than anything else. All the preparation kind of dissolved away, and it became about the poetry of the landscape, Hugh Glass's relationship with the natural world, its ability to, take his life so easily, but also the things that, allowed him to survive in the wilderness were given to him by nature. It was this very almost poetic existential story. It became something completely different when we were there, but I think that's what I saw in Alejandro's eyes when I first met him, that he wanted to almost create near-realism, a virtual reality experience, and explore these themes, and the answers would come to us when we were there, and they did. And most of what you see up on screen is a result of us really reenacting this man's life.
Question ici.
J'ai une question pour Alejandro et Leonardo. Pour Alejandro, c'est savoir ce que son film n'est pas une métaphore des origines. Question. Et pour métaphore des origines. Et pour Leonardo, il nous parle un peu de la scène de l'ours, comment il a vécu, comment il s'est passé.
Well, question for you first, Alejandro. I mean, do you feel that the Revenant, in some ways, is a metaphor for humanity's origins, so to speak?
For what, sorry?
For humanity's origins. Is that what you
origins
meant?
of man.
Yes.
Where you are? Sorry, I didn't saw.
Oh, oui.
Well, I think it's the story of every colonialism story. So I think it represents what the clash of cultures always has been, which is a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of prejudice, a lot of emancipation, and a lot of ignorance involved in the process of interacting one and the other, and the abuse of nature and communities, and so in a way, this story is not different than when the Spanish arrived to America and my country. I think it's hard to judge these people without the context of that time, because in that time, obviously, they didn't know a lot of things that we know now. So many things were wrong in that time, and many things were right too. But I think what is striking for me is that many of the things that were, in a way, tough, they're how cruel and difficult, it hasn't changed. So one of the things that I found that is that the way we interact with nature and with societies, and the insatiable greed of conquer and profit, in a way, like the regulate capitalism that we are living now in the world, the Western world, was implanted very clearly in every colonialist story as that one.
The second part of the question was for you, Leonardo. I mean, obviously, they all want to know about the bear scene, or how to bear the unbearable, so to speak. How did you do that?
Without speaking specifically about how the shot was executed, I think people are talking about it for good reason, because I believe that Alejandro has pulled off a groundbreaking piece of cinema in that sequence. But that, whenever you talk about a sequence like that, there's a lot of thought that's put into it. Alejandro didn't just show up there that day with the camera and ask me to fly around the woods. This was, over 100 different sequences that he saw of bear attacks. And more so than that, him working with Chivo to try to achieve what was a voyeuristic cinematic experience, where you're watching this clash between man versus beast, where you feel like you feel the elements literally on the lens of the camera, and you're watching something that you shouldn't be watching. And this was weeks and weeks and weeks of planning and rehearsal to achieve something that is so visceral. And when CGI is used in the sequence, which it is, and CGI is used very sparingly in this movie, it's only to bring you into a more immersive film watching experience as an audience. Everything that he did, CGI, was to almost dirty the atmosphere more, to bring more weight to the bear attack. I think we're used to seeing CGI in a way that where everything is sort of there's no weight, everything's flying around the screen, but this is a grounding experience. And I haven't seen many sequences like this ever in cinema's history. So I think people are talking about it for very good reason, and a lot of it was rehearsed meticulously beforehand, especially the moments of silence, which add, to me, great tension in those moments with the bear, because you're in anticipation of what the hell this animal's going to do next. It's man completely being victimized by something much more powerful than him.
Well, you play a very key role in the film, and you have a very special bond with your glass. Could you tell us about what your character is about and your experience on this film.
Yeah, of course. Honoured to play Jim Bridger first and foremost. I think for all of us playing characters who really did exist in this time, and particularly through the difficult conditions you see portrayed in the film, was was a huge opportunity. I found myself finishing the experience with a kind of great respect and newfound impression of the guys that we were representing. In relation to Jim Bridger's relationship with Glass, I kind of always saw it as a sort of unofficial father-son relationship. I think for Jim, at least, Hugh Glass was the closest thing he had to a father, and particularly out there, I think the trappers were each other's family. Many of them left any form of family or any form of home that they knew beforehand. And I sort of saw him as almost like an assistant or an understudy. I felt like he had a lot of admiration for Glass and learned a great deal by working sort of with and for him. And that's really how I saw their dynamic playing out, which fed into the kind of turmoil that he feels when he's sort of forced to abandon him. I think that's what makes the decision particularly hard for Jim.
Question. Where's the mic?
Yes, here it is.
Here we are.
Yes, a question for Leonardo. Your character, Douglas, here, speaks the Pawnee language. How did you learn it? And could you say a few words in
Please. Oh, boy.
Also a question for Alejandro. Could you say a few words about that ritual ceremony that you organized at the beginning of the shooting, with Indian tribes or something?
Yeah, with the red roses.
Yes, absolutely, the red roses.
More so than speaking Arikara or Pawnee, which I would be a dismal failure if I were to try to recreate here in front of all of you. What was interesting and so entirely helpful for us while making this movie was just understanding their history. Understanding while we were making this movie and reflecting upon how much has been taken away from their cultures. And as just to point out back to what Alejandro said, while making this film, so many things, we were enlightened by so many things in history. And we think we've learned from history, and we think we won't make the same barbaric choices that we've made in the past. But I got to simultaneously do a documentary while I was making this movie on climate change, and that led me to places around the world, including Canada, where you see, entire cultures that are displaced because of these capitalistic forces going into the places of most natural beauty and trying to extract the resources there, and at what cost. And this is a story of the first surge out west from the east to extract the furs from what was the American Amazon at that time. And we look at this story as barbaric, but if you look at the rest of the world nowadays, this is happening all over the world on an unprecedented level, and indigenous tribes all over the world are feeling the brunt of people and forces and companies coming in, disrespecting the natural world, extracting the resources, and poisoning their rivers, cutting down their trees, and systematically destroying the natural world. So that was what was fascinating to me about making this movie, was that through line and how it relates to today.
Alejandro, the second part of the question was for you and the beautiful blessing ceremony you did in Native Indians before the film started. Could you tell us about why you did it and how it felt?
Well, we were shooting in native lands. Basically, we were privileged to have them allow us to do that. And obviously, these native communities in Canada are very, they are root in a lot of, they are root in their traditions. And they honor nature in a way that, unfortunately, we don't understand. But for them, nature is not a utility. to serve, but it's kind of really relate to that they consider themselves as, I believe, an extension of nature, so they treat it as equals, and they have this a very beautiful ritual about to ask permission to the land and to give blessings to everybody to be treated fairly, and they want to bless us. So, and then I have since I start shooting, since Amores Perros, I have this my own kind of ritual, which is get together my crew and make a circle and just stay for a minute of silence and just get good energy and, you know, just to create kind of a unity of strength and power and awareness. And then I do the same at the end. So the beautiful thing about it is that we first start with their ritual, with their blessing. All the crew were blessed in their tradition. They pray. They have a lot of incense and a lot of things that we were really lucky to have. And then after we did the flower ritual, which is what I do, cutting some red petals, and so it was a good blending or fusion of two traditions, and it just created a lot of good energy. And honestly, it helped because during so many months in tough conditions and risky kind of things, honestly, nobody was hurt, and we were very lucky to be in good shape during the whole thing, you know.
Question here, please. Mike. Where is it?
Here.
Okay, then we'll go to you, Jasmine.
I have a question for Leonardo. When you choose a movie, is it important that it deliver some kind of ecological message?
That's very sweet. I wish, you know, I would love to find more films that have an ecological message. No, that isn't, you know, I think that I've traditionally just chosen films that give us an insight in what it is to be a human being more. That's what interests me. You know, films that get us closer to understanding the human condition. So they've been, I suppose, characters in a lot of extreme circumstances. But yes, I mean, I would love to find a film that is entirely ecologically based. I'm still searching for that right formula of what that can be, what that storyline is, whether it's set in the future, whether it's set in the past. But at the end of the day, you know, you have to do something that is compelling from a narrative aspect, and I have not yet I've not yet accomplished that goal in the development of a project yet, and I won't do a movie just for the sake that it has ecological undertones. This film for me brought a lot of that on through the making of it, but I've been doing a documentary for the last 2 years. You know, conveying the science of climate change is hard enough as it is, and then trying to put that into a formula that is a movie it doesn't always involve, you know, giant waves crashing over the Empire State Building. It has to be something based in enough reality so people understand the effects of how this is going to change our future for millions of years. And so a documentary, to me, being able to convey the science in a way that people understand that is probably more conversational has been my attempt with this new doc, and it's brought me to China and the Arctic, Greenland. You know, we shot in the southern tip of Argentina as well, India, all over the world. We were recently in Paris for the climate conference, and I've gotten to interview everyone from Ban Ki-moon to Bill Clinton to John Kerry to 70 different scientists, and hopefully this will come out this year and you know, not give a new perspective on climate change, but you know, this climate change to me is not only the largest existential crisis that man has ever taken on and is going to cause us to evolve as a species to tackle, but you know, people need to have a deep understanding of what our future looks like, and how it's no longer about the individual anymore. It's about we as a communal species need to act together in what is the biggest challenge we've ever been given.
To survive as a species, yes. Yeah.
This question for Leonardo. Although you did a lot of preparation for this role,
I think we all underestimated what this experience would be. Look, first off, wanting to do this movie was simply because I wanted to work with this guy right here. I really wanted to, be a part of something incredibly unique. He set up a series of incredible challenges for himself from the onset. And from the opening shot, which took weeks and weeks just to rehearse, let alone pull off and shoot, we knew he had set the bar so high that we needed to continue on with a level of filmmaking that was going to be incredibly challenging. That, coupled with the fact that we were working in nature, far off locations with extreme weather conditions, which shut us down for weeks at a time, which posed all kinds of other challenges, made this one of the most difficult professional experiences that I've ever had. But a lot has been talked about the difficulty of making this movie. Like Alejandro says, that is our job. That's what we're there to do. But to me, when people start talking about how a director demands so much from their actors or demands so much from their crew, it's not disheartening, but it makes me want to speak out and say, that's exactly what the hell you want your director to be doing. You want your director to create an authentic filmmaking experience for you as an actor, surroundings that are immersive for you as an actor, and ultimately you want your director to sit there and think about every single frame of that movie. He is painting a portrait for you. He's painting cinema on a large canvas. So it was assuring. I would have done anything he asked, because why the hell would we be there in the first place? Why are we putting ourselves through this experience if it's not going to be a memorable piece of art? And that means, giving the audience something that is absolutely authentic. And that takes a lot of work. And that's what you expect from a director. Otherwise it's a waste of time.
Questions
Yes,
here?
hello, back row. First of all, congratulations on winning the Golden Globes. It's truly deserved. I would
Thank
like to ask two questions. The first one is, if someone is left for dead in the Hollywood movie business, does his chances to come back are real? And is it as harder as shown in the movie? And the second question is for Will. You're a young actor. I would like to know what was your reaction when the shooting ended? Was it, come on, bring me more, or never again?
All right, Will, here we go.
Yeah, I think I probably experienced my Hollywood birth on this movie. In many ways, this was an incredibly challenging experience, as Alejandro and Leo just mentioned. And I think it was certainly for me and like a lot of people working on the movie, the hardest thing we've ever done. But I think it was kind of a double-edged sword. The reason this film was such an incredible experience, such a rewarding and gratifying experience by the end, was because it was so challenging. And I think we knew to an extent going into the shooting of the movie that it was going to be very difficult, that it was going to challenge us all. But there's something very rewarding in working past the point at which you thought you couldn't take any more, having to endure things beyond what your sort of perceived threshold was. I think I knew that I was going to be tested to my limits, but working past that point and sort of lasting the experience, you discover things that you wouldn't ordinarily. And I was ready to go home at the end of the shooting, but what I did know is that I had been kind of equipped with a resilience for future projects. And I also wanted to be challenged next time round. I wanted to push myself, and I kind of, I suppose, feel as though in future projects I want to make sure that I'm testing new aspects of my personality and my skill set as an actor, I suppose.
Alejandro, the last word was, would you like, for instance, the audience to feel when they will first discover the Revenant?
What I would like?
What did you want the audience to feel when they would discover the Revenant after all these months spent away? Last word of conclusion for us.
Well, I think at least what we all attempt was to give the audience a very sensorial, submersive experience in order that the audience can literally get into the painting sonically and physically and experience what the character is living in a world that doesn't exist anymore, but that we belong, and that it seems now crazy that many people, when they see it, tell me, oh my God, it looks like science fiction, when actually we belong to that world. It's just that we just disattach ourselves for that world, and we are covered with human objects and concrete, but we were like that not many years ago. But if we can feel again that interaction with the cold, and that the people can feel the fear and die, and the anger, and then reborn, and then be healed, and then die again cinematically, and hear the silences, and get into a cinematic experience. If that is achieved through an emotional journey, then mission accomplished. If not, then we fail. So people will decide.
Well, we all certainly felt that when we watched your movie. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Bringing the Revenant to life.
Thank you. Thank
you
you very much.
Merci à vous d'être ici.
You want to take your artwork with you?